Hey guys, my name's Eternize, and today we're recreating the iconic kick from Donkey Rollers that made way for what hardstyle is today. This is what we're talking about. This kick set the bar for what a hardstyle kick drum could sound like, and till this day this kick still packs a punch. So they used this kick in numerous tracks, including Followers and Sani's Science and Religion, but the first appearance of this kick was in 2004 with Strike Again. That's 17 years ago at the time of this video. That's insane. Having said that though, they had all the necessary tools that I'm using in this video to create the kick. The important ones of course being the EQ and distortion. Let's jump into the video. Now I'm pretty sure that the original Donkey Rollers kick was created from distorting a single kick drum, which in itself is crazy by the way. But in this video we're going to divide it into 4 steps, which is more in line with what you would typically do today when creating kicks. Let's have a listen to the kick in its entirety and then listen to the individual layers afterwards. So we have the tail, and the reverb. Then we have the punch, and the click of the punch. Now we'll go over the plugins in the individual layers, but it's important to keep in mind that creating a hardstyle kick is a back and forth process. It's not like mixing where every consecutive plugin improves upon the sound. Creating a hardstyle kick more often than not involves jumping back 10 plugins and making adjustments to shape the sound. So while every plugin doesn't seem to make a ton of sense, they all have their place in the channel strip. So for the tail I'm using a drum synth in Logic, which basically just recreates drum sounds. In this case I'm using the heavy kick with a moderate decay. So for the plugins we have volume control, then we have the EQ, which is taking out some of the low end. And then we have our first distortion. In this case the gain was all the way down, so I reset it to 0 for the demonstration of this kick. Next up we have another EQ with some weird settings around the low end and mid frequencies. Then another distortion. Again with the symmetry to one of the sides. Another EQ. So this is a cutoff filter which is filtering away all the high frequencies as the kick progresses. You can get the same result, which I am also showing in one of my other kick videos, by automating an EQ and take out the low end gradually. Next up I use a bit crusher, but this is only the drive, which is basically a very clean distortion on the clip mode. And I only use 30% of the mix. Then we have another clip distortion, and now the characteristics of the tail really starts to come through. Another EQ. And here we inverted the phase of the entire kick. So note that the tone is actually changing quite a bit. And as we distort more in the later process, this is going to have a big impact. Next up, another EQ. And another distortion. I think at this point I can turn this back down. And another distortion. Another one. And this is where we are done with the distortion process, and now it comes to the EQ. So now I'm taking away nasty frequencies and boosting where I see fit. So, for example, this one makes a lot of difference in bringing out those crunchy frequencies in the high end. And some more corrective EQ. And some more. Then we have a wave shaper or a volume shaper, which is taking out the initial part of the kick, only leaving the tail intact. And another cutoff filter, which is taking out the very last part of the kick. And then we have a gain plugin bringing the tail back to normal levels. So for the reverb of the tail, I bounced out the tail of the kick with the attack part intact, which would sound like this. Then we engage the reverb, Valhalla Room. And then we're bringing the EQ to tame the frequencies and remove the low end that we don't need. And in the end, just a gain plugin for gain staging. Next up is the punch, which by itself is just a very simple kick sound inside of Silent 1, but you can really do this with any synth nowadays. Again, starting off by removing some of the low end and bringing in the distortion. An EQ. And some more distortion. And some corrective EQ here. And then just as we do with the tail, now we're just cutting away everything that is not the punch. So we're leaving the punch intact. And a gain plugin for gain staging. So for the click, again, this is a bounce of the punch layer, which is cut up and made very short and attacky. And then we're making a spike, which is creating that very talky sound, and some EQ adjustments. And then tidying up the talk here. So we get rid of the ringing from this very resonant spike here. And together with the actual punch, this gives it a very nice attack. In the end, they are all routed to bus 1. And on bus 1, we have a linear phase EQ with a low cut. In this case, you will have to have some very good monitoring to actually hear the difference here. But it is really just tidying up the kick and making the low end a little bit more controlled. And then we have Oxford Inflator, which is just taming the dynamics of the kick and making the kick a little bit tighter. So jumping back to the tail, I really want to stress the point I made about jumping back and forth between plugins. Let's take a listen to the slightest adjustments I'm making to the kick early on in the process before we reach the distortion in the end. So things like this cutoff filter really seems to make a big difference in how the kick is sounding throughout the tail. So really, cutting off the high frequencies and making this bouncy sound of the kick. And there really is no rules and even an element of luck when creating these type of kicks, because you really don't know how the kick is reacting when you're distorting this much. Alright guys, that's all I had for you this week. Please let me know if you enjoyed this content by liking the video. Also, check out my other content and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with new videos. I wish you a good day. Until next time. Peace.